Hola a todos, hi everyone, yo soy Carla Rodríguez y este es Metafit Metamind Podcast, el lugar donde normalizamos conversaciones sobre la salud física y mental, the place where we normalize the conversation about both physical and mental health. It's the week after Thanksgiving, so I hope you all enjoyed it if you are here in the US, or I guess if you're around the world, you enjoyed if you did go to Black Friday. I hope it was good. It was kind of scary when I did go because I did go to the stores and I looked for some PlayStation controllers because I needed some because guess what? My youngest puppy, she had bit my previous controllers, so that was horrible. I know that's not really much of an update, but I really do hope that y'all had a good holiday break. Although I am no longer sick, I do have allergies, so I apologize if I do not sound the same. I have not fully recovered, and I didn't know that I actually suffered from allergies until now. Today is my second day with these allergies, so that was kind of unexpected, but I'm taking it the best I can, and I'm just happy to be able to function on a daily basis. If you have allergies, how do you deal with your allergies in a holistic way? Do you take some kind of liquid something? Do you eat fruit? If you do have allergies and you have suggestions, please let me know because I've never actually dealt with allergies before, so now I need to know how to take care of my body in that way as well. If you still have not purchased Women Entrepreneurs Volume 1 and want it in a paper copy, visit my website in the shop page and you can order it straight from there. Now, if you're like a lot of millennials and don't like paper, then definitely go on the Amazon page and get it in the Kindle version. Whatever way, if you choose to read it, I really appreciate the support. I know last time I also mentioned that I would be going back to jiu-jitsu this week, and I finally did yesterday. I'm hoping I can keep up the momentum going because it is a lot of fun. It does take time, of course, to be going back and forth, and there's a lot of things that I have to take care of at home, but it is a time where I also like to go and feel that I can learn these techniques, these movements, that I'm strong enough to defend myself and maybe even take someone down in case anything ever happens. It's good self-defense. And if a lot of you are curious about jiu-jitsu, I definitely recommend going and checking it out, and if you like it, cool. If not, then at least you tried it. You gave it a shot. As a lot of you know, I was doing the open workout about 3 weeks ago before I got sick for 5 weeks. Before that, it was one workout per week. And the last workout had muscle ups. It actually had ring muscle ups. And to that point, I was not able to have a muscle up. I had not completed that movement or anything like that. But until last week, the day before Thanksgiving, I got my first muscle up. And that was such an emotional moment for me because I had been working on progressions and pull-ups and things for about a year and a half, and I just could not get the movement. Then I got a second one, by the way, for the video, because the first one, of course, I did not get it in video. But it was one of those days and times, and I guess it was the right time for me to get it. And I am honestly so grateful to my body for allowing me to do the movement, but also to myself for not giving up, and also to my coaches who continue to push me. So that was a really cool Thanksgiving gift. I think I'm going to start doing a shout out per week to those of you who do leave a review for me because I'm really super grateful, and this is a way that I want to express how grateful I am by giving you a shout out. So I'm going to just call out a good friend of mine. She goes by Spencer Tracy on her review. She said, "Hooray! This is so awesome, Carla. Looking forward to listening to more." And this was her first review. She was my first review, actually. And I'm super grateful that she's continued to believe in me from the start. And now I'm in this episode. I think this is episode number 16. And so it's really exciting to have supporters. And if you want to rate and review, just put it on Apple Podcast. You can also review on podchaser.com. and look up at Carlita XFit, and I'll post a link as well on the show notes if you do want to leave a review through there. I am on Patreon, so just go to patreon.com/Metafit Metamind, and if you want to support the show in a different aspect in growing my podcast, my mission to allow people to raise their voice, to share their story, or in Spanish, like I keep saying, alza tu voz, comparte tu historia. I want to continue to use this platform to allow you to share your story and to be able to tackle that conversation that is not normal around mental and physical health and things that we just don't normally would think about that are a conversation. Now, in this episode, I was able to have a conversation with a Latina empowering others, especially the Latino community, to expand their minds to know that there's more that they have the ability to do. Reyna Marrufo is a fearless, confident, and young entrepreneur chasing her dreams and also sharing with others in order for them to know that they can chase theirs. I hope you enjoy this episode and this conversation.
Thank you so much for agreeing or deciding to join my conversation of Metafit Metamind podcast, where my journey and my goal is to normalize these conversations surrounded with the mental health and the physical health of in the Hispanic community, and of course everybody else. But also, I love to do it in the way where you get to share your story and your journey on how you've gotten to where you are at. And I like to start with this with who is Reina?
Well, first off, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I am very, very grateful, and I love that you host this safe space for people to share their story about a very important topic. So, who is Reina? I'm 23 years old. I'm from Los Angeles, California,
Ooh.
and yeah, I know LA. Hey. And I'm the youngest of six girls. My dad is from Durango. My mom is from Zacatecas. And I love to dance. I love to read. I love to learn. I would love to watch documentaries. I do have a podcast as well. And I'm also very, very big on marketing. I do run a social media agency. And another little like side hobby, I like to learn about investing in rental properties and real estate and things like that. So I like to just learn and really be involved and keep busy.
So you're a young entrepreneur looking for ways to grow, pretty much.
Yes, yeah. So I'm super young, so I'm really like open to new avenues to where I feel that I can, become an asset.
Yeah, and I mean, you being so young, how did you even start to want to get into, investment properties and get into marketing? How did you get into that? Was it because you're the youngest and you learned from your family members who are older, or how did you get into that?
Yeah, I think I've always had like an entrepreneur spirit, and I think that really led to me not wanting to ask my parents for money. I was always very observant and aware of like the situation that my parents like that we did I guess that money was very limited in my family. So especially like being the youngest, I just noticed like my parents, always kind of saying like, "Oh, there's not a lot of money," so just like try not to ask us for anything,
Yeah.
but in like a nice way. I mean, they gave us like all the necessities, of course, and like thank God, like we've never been like homeless or hungry. So that that's really important. But in other things, I think as a kid, like I wanted to have like nice new shoes or like the newest this or that, or if I just wanted to have some extra money, I started like selling candy and like chips, and then it just like all I think with that eventually like grew like my entrepreneur spirit. And in high school I ended up like founding two clubs, and one was
Cool.
like a women empowerment club, and then the other one was the Europe club. And the Europe club was all about wanting to fundraise to travel to Europe. So I was really like, just why not, like, type of attitude. And
Yeah.
for 3 years I dedicated a lot of my time to fundraising, and at the end of it, 17 of us did end up going from my community to Europe. We went to like London, France, and Italy, and I think that was like the first part of my journey of like discovering that like anything is possible, right? And with the Women Empowerment Club, I was very, very passionate about empowering women. I think I saw a lot of women, like young girls, suffering from self-confidence. And so I wanted to host these women empowerment events. And it continued on to college and after college as well.
That's awesome. So that's pretty amazing for you being at that age, wanting to empower women. What is your story on how you did get to that point and up to this point of wanting to empower women? Was it something that happened to you or something that you noticed as when you were a kid or a teenager? How did you get this? What is Reyna's story?
Reyna's story. So I feel that when I was younger, I remember, like, I guess seeing the dynamic between my parents, in like the traditional Mexican household. I was very resentful, honestly, for a long time towards my dad. And like when I was younger, like junior high, just because I saw how much my mom was working. So like I knew he would go to work, but I just, from what I saw, like my mom, like she had to like take us to school, then go clean houses, then pick us up, then make dinner to have it ready for him, clean the house. And then sometimes, he was just like not appreciative or things like that. But I feel like as a young child, like I was just too involved into this relationship that I shouldn't be. Like you shouldn't be in like getting involved in your parents' marriage, or like defending your mom and arguing with your dad. Because at the end of the day, like my mom chooses to be with him. You know what I mean? She can, and I'm not saying like my dad's like I love my dad. He's an awesome guy,
Yeah.
but they just like came to that understanding, like that's how they were going to be. But I don't know why I just was so angry about it. Like I didn't like it because I felt like it was still unfair. And I didn't want to grow up in, I guess that came from like, I didn't want to rely on a man, like financially. And with that, I decided to really I wanted to empower myself and also just host workshops. Like I just felt like I needed to, kind of going a little bit more back, in 6th grade, I actually got in trouble in school and got suspended. And I know.
6th grade, huh?
6th grade, I know. And they actually required me to go to counseling, and it was like a group for young girls, like all the 6th grade girls that got in trouble. We went into that counseling session, and I really liked how the counselor was like making us do like different activities, and like I realized how I was sharing my side of like what I was going through at home, but a lot of these younger girls were going through so much worse, just horrible things. And I just felt like, wow, but they felt better after. And I felt like that really like sparked an idea within me in junior high. And then in high school, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. Like, I'm going to do something similar. There was nothing like that at my school, like no support group, no nothing. And I just felt like, why not? And so I just remember going to my counselor, and she thought I was like she looked at me like I'm crazy, but she was just like, wow, like who is this young 14-year-old wanting to like start this at the high school? Like it was just so weird to her. But that really, from there, I just decided to really empower women, and I always loved doing that. And I think after that, I started going to a lot more entrepreneur conferences, and I started meeting a lot of people, but a lot of the times, these were like either they were not Latinos, they were mainly men. And I just felt like women need to be in these spaces as well. And they needed to be aware. And so that's how I started my blog. I first started off with a blog, like a Spanglish blog. So I was going to document my journey, like, oh, I'm going to go to a conference and like blog about it.
Yeah.
And then I felt like people were like, you should do a YouTube channel and vlog about it, right? Like do the
Yeah.
videos. And I was like, okay. So then I tried it, but I was like, like this is like, number one, it's a lot of work, and number two, like I don't know if I want people knowing everything about my business. Like I feel like once you go into YouTube, you really like open up your whole life, I guess, in like a vlog, like vlogging style. And personally, I just think I kind of like to leave some personal, privacy. So I really like, but I actually started listening to podcasts more, and I just realized, like, I'm like, oh, like I could do a podcast as well. Like I listen to them way more than I watch YouTube videos, because I'm like driving and everything. And then I was very inspired by Gary Vaynerchuk, who was always like on the next thing.
Yeah.
And he was like, audio is like the next big thing, so you should
And
try.
I follow him on Instagram too.
Yes, he's super. I loved listening to him, and so that's how I started my podcast, and all about like interviewing mainly like entrepreneurs and like Latino entrepreneurs, so that people have an idea that there are people like them out there, that have that maybe took a risk of quitting their job, or took a risk of not going the traditional route. Because I feel like in high school, especially, I was an AP student, I was like an honor student, but I just felt really, I was friends with a lot, like everybody, like those who were in the regular classes, quote unquote,
Mm-hmm.
and but they were very intelligent people. They just didn't have a passion for education, but they had other passions. Maybe they were good artists, and I felt like they were always like left out by the teachers, by school, because school is just so, college is everything. Like they kind of just focused on the students that were going to go to college. And I don't know, that really stuck with me, because I felt like those were the students who were actually the most creative. But and meeting these entrepreneurs at these conferences, I realized they didn't even go to college sometimes, or they just like, they went to college, but they're not even using their degree.
I mean, look at the founder of Facebook.
The founder of Facebook, Sarah Blakely, the founder of, Steve Jobs, like
Yeah.
he dropped out. Like so many, I know, I like love these stories. I love all of those stories, because it's so true. I mean, as long as you have like a plan, I'm not saying like drop out, but yeah.
I want to go back a little bit to your life as a teenager and before you went to this counseling. Do you think you were angry for as long as you can remember until you got to this counselor? And did you feel angry because I know you said that although both your parents worked, you felt like your mom did more, and of course in the Latino community, Hispanic community, normally a lot of times both our parents work, but once the male gets home, he's done, right? Do you think you were angry because of that, because you felt like there was not an equal value or equal, like, equality there between both of them? Or why do you think you were angry as a kid? Were you angry because you were the youngest and they decided, you know what, she's going to be our mediator? Where do you think that anger stemmed from?
Yeah, it definitely, that's a good question. It definitely was because I did see the inequality, but I think it was even more highlighted because it's interesting. Like I think a lot of people always say like I'm more mature for my age. And I think it's because I grew up with everyone older than me, right? I'm the youngest. So I grew up with like my older sisters and my parents, and I just always like was very observant, and like I know a lot of different situations because I saw my sisters in relationships and friendships and different things. I've seen it. And with my mom specifically, like she liked to, I think a lot of moms do this too, like they vent to their kids, and I think I was that person who was always like a good listener, and just like listening to my mom vent about like my dad or things that she didn't like. And I think it obviously like building this like, okay, anger because I'm feeling her frustration and I can see. But it got to the point where it was really unhealthy for me, that And I had to tell my mom, like, I don't want you telling me anymore. Like, I am sorry, like, but you know, you need to go tell friends this, or like somebody else, or go to a counselor, because this is really affecting my relationship with my dad. Like, I need to respect him, you know. And I just think, because he is my dad and he was like providing for me and things like that, and there's just like a level of respect that I have to give him. And it really was like hard on her, I think, in the beginning, because she was just like, whoa, like I felt like she was like, it was like a a friendship relationship, and I
You didn't
couldn't
want to
do
be her
that.
friend.
Yeah, I had to remind her, like, I'm your daughter and I'm his daughter, and like I can't be growing this resentment
Yeah, I
anymore.
feel like there should be a limit or a boundary, and that's a lot of times what our families don't understand is boundaries, correct? And
Yes.
I think my mom was the same way as a kid, where I was also the mediator because I was the only one in the house. So you would see the arguments, or you would see all the situations. Let me ask you something. Was your dad someone who disrespected your mom, or it wasn't really that, and it's just like they just wouldn't be private about their arguments? They didn't really respect their kids because they didn't respect those boundaries of, my kids should probably not be seeing this. Yes, they should understand that we did argue, but let's talk about it somewhere else, where they probably didn't care. But what do you think happened there? Like, why do you think, why were you blaming your father? That's really my question.
I mean, I think from what I feel is because I guess I saw the inequality at a young age, and I just felt like she wasn't being appreciated. Or yeah, they would argue, and I'm not gonna lie, there were probably arguments that were more intense than they should be. Like when I was younger, they were definitely more, you know, I'm just gonna say that, intense, and just like in respect to their relationship. But yeah, I think that was also a big like trauma, and seeing that, like, how just my mom just had to, like, you know, forgive so much. And I felt like their relationship is, they did end up going to like a marriage counseling and everything, and it really really helped, but it took forever to get to that point, you
Yeah.
know, like after like 20 years of like just a lot of my mom having to just live with my dad, who wasn't very helpful or wasn't very supportive as he is like today. And
Okay.
my older sisters can speak more on that, because they grew up with a different dad. They say, they're just like, oh, the dad you grew up with is like nothing compared to, and I was like the younger one, you know, and they were the old. So it was like a really interesting, like they just grew up with my parents who were younger, you know,
More
weren't
maturity,
really,
probably.
yeah, maturity. And so I got like a taste of it, but not too much. But it did, you know, that was enough. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where it gets frustrating, and it's good that you did decide to set that boundary between your mom and you.
Yeah.
And my next question is, what how did you get out of that anger? And I know you said you went to the counselor. Did it take you a long time to get that anger out of you, or was it probably pretty quickly that it happened?
I think pretty quickly, you know, I remember talking to her one time, just me and her, the counselor, and we were like walking to like, I think she picked me up from my class, and we are walking to her office. I just remember telling her, like, I'm just angry at my dad. He doesn't appreciate. And I remember her listening to me. But yeah, I think it was pretty soon that, like, that's where some of my anger was from.
And did that affect you physically in any way as you were growing up?
Mm,
Because the reason I ask is because a lot of times, and this is just my belief, and your belief could be different,
yeah.
is that if we're not okay mentally, then sometimes it affects our physical health, or vice versa, where if physically we're sick, we're all kinds, maybe we hurt ourselves, something, right? And then our mental health changes. Do you think any of that got affected as you were growing up? I mean, you did. The good thing is that you're very open minded and you're open to helping others. So, was that in any way affected?
No, I not my body. Not because of like my dad or like what was going on or anything. I guess, well, this is like at a younger age I was very self-conscious of like my body because I felt like I went through puberty like more like quickly than other girls, and I just got like attention. Like I guess it could be considered good, but like, you know, like my breasts were bigger than like more of the girls, and I just felt like, oh my god, like I'm gaining so much weight. I just remember like always weighing myself.
Yeah.
And this was mainly because like I had a friend who I went to her house, and her dad actually one time like weighed me. Like he's like, get on the scale.
What?
Okay. And I was in 4th grade, and
You
he
were
weighed.
young.
I was super young, and he's
Yeah.
like, you see that, like that's a lot of weight, like he would tell me. And like his daughter's like this thin, like they're a different ethnicity. They're Asian, which already that's like yeah, Asian. And I was just like this like 4th, 5th grader, like already getting curves and like, and it was, you know, like I didn't, but I think and like I remember I was very self-conscious of like what I was eating when I was younger, but it wasn't due to that of what my parents. It was like that situation that they were.
That brings another question though, because that's actually really interesting. Is you did go through puberty at an early age. You were more self-conscious at an earlier age. So your confidence was affected at an earlier age. So have you ever thought about the possibility that you were angry or frustrated because you, in a way, you did go through this a little earlier, and at the same time there was all the other situations happening at home? Have you ever thought of that?
I didn't know. I've never thought of them like together, but definitely that was just like an inner, you know, like battle, my weight. And I remember, yeah, I remember thinking I was so fat, but because I had all these like super thin friends that just hadn't gone through
Yeah,
puberty.
yeah, but other people didn't understand you at the
Yeah.
time.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I guess you going through puberty earlier, did your mom try to talk to you about that being a normal situation that women go through, or was she the type that was protective? Because that's how my mom was. My mom cried when I went through puberty. So, so did your mom try to hide it or protect you from it, or did she actually have a conversation with you?
No, she had a very open conversation. She's like, yeah, like this is normal, you know, like it's gonna happen to you. Like I guess I'm like the sixth daughter, like that she had to have the
Well, yeah, yeah,
conversation
yeah.
with.
She's gone through
So
this before.
she's like, girl, just you know, talk. And then I kind of knew from my sisters too, so I was just like expecting it too.
Just not that early.
Yeah, not that. I mean, not that early for sure, but definitely, it was just something I knew as a young girl.
Yeah, that's just something that came up to mind right now as you were telling me this, that you went through puberty at an earlier age, but at this end, I mean, at 14, you were already angry when you went to talk to your counselor. So, in my mind, it just kind of connected without you really ever thinking about it, possibly. Sometimes things just lead up to things, you know?
Yes.
And at least I'm glad your mom did talk to you about it. And then the good thing is you've been confident about yourself since then. And the great part is that you've always wanted to empower the Latino community, the women as well. You empower yourself at the same time as you empower others. And I don't know if you ever think about that for yourself too,
Yes.
that by you empowering someone, you also think, wow, like you're doing something amazing, something great at the same time.
Yeah, I'm definitely healing all like as well, you know. And if I learn something that has helped me become a better person, then I want to teach others as well. And I feel like a lot of the times these people who teach it are personal development, it meaning like personal development, maybe like things that can help your mental health or help better eating or better habits. They don't look like you. But if a Latina is sharing it in like a Spanglish version on like Instagram stories, like you're just like, oh yeah, it's like more relatable. And I think that's like where I've been able to connect with a lot of people, that it's just more relatable. Like, look, I'm reading this book, and I think like that's also another thing. Like a lot of Latinas aren't portrayed as like educated women or like, I mean, I don't know. I think now, of course, it's growing, but more Latinas are just like sexualized or things like that. And I feel I'm just tired of it. I'm just like, no, like I want to be in that business meeting, in that room with investors,
not be a minority anymore.
Yeah, and even though it's upsetting that it is like that now, we kind of have to get over it and just make each other uncomfortable. And luckily, it's interesting. Despite going to these events, a lot of women can maybe feel like intimidated by guys, but honestly, I don't. And I remember this one of my good friends at a conference, he was like, you really are, he's like, do you have brothers? And I was like, no, like I only have sisters. He's like, oh, because you're really like comfortable talking with men. And it's like I don't, you know what I mean? Like I feel it's interesting too for me. It's a very interesting thing for me, because I feel like I just talk to them like normal, but I never grew up with them. So that's where I'm really interested in about it.
Yeah, I mean, you've grown up with older sisters, so it could just possibly be that you just think of them as more people.
Yeah.
Like maybe you don't think of them as the gender, you think of them as other human beings who are possibly older than you, but you've grown up as a younger sibling who has had to power herself through these conversations with the siblings.
Yeah, and I think that's harder for people who maybe were the oldest, and so they're not used to talking to older people than them. So, and for me, like my sisters are like in their 30s, so I felt like it's just that like I don't have that barrier, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
At least one barrier down,
Something I want to know is what's next for you? What are you planning? What's coming up for 2020? What's next in your plan, in your journey?
For 2020, I definitely want to get more into real estate, and specifically like investing, and I want to do this in order to start building my wealth, like long-term wealth, and so that I can have more freedom to either invest in properties, like host co-working spaces, invest in other women businesses. Like that's my long-term goal. 2020, I want to host more events, more like goal setting. I think that's like a strong suit that I have of like, okay, like I love planning and setting goals and like finding ways to create action on them. I really want to create more events in that. And marketing, I do social media marketing as well for Latina owned businesses. I really do love it, and but I think I'm gonna be going towards more like the event planning. I do like just connecting with people more in person.
I mean, you are an organizer and a planner, so that would be good for you to do the event planning as well. And you're able to help others set those goals of like, all right, this is the event you want. Let's start these goals and these plans, right?
Exactly.
And what is one thing you would want someone that has gone through anger or something that you've gone through to remember? What's something that you normally try to remember on a daily basis?
I always try to stay grateful for what I have. So gratitude. I think, it's really easy to be in very difficult situations, or to think of the negative. But then when I think of like the positive, I'm just like, okay, like I have to say 10 things. Like I just listed a whole, like all these 5 things that I hate that are like horrible. I'm like, so I always like double it. I'm like, okay, then I have to do 10 things, say 10 things that I'm grateful for and that I'm so blessed to have, and right away it shifts my mindset, because how you feel is really like what you attract. So if you're always feeling sad, depressed, ungrateful, like amargada, I guess you could say, then you're gonna like attract that in different ways. But if you can try to get that feeling of hope and happiness, then you're going to attract that as well.
Oh, that's actually something that is good to remember.
Yes. Whenever where you're driving, whenever like just I normally do it when I'm driving, like I'm thankful for my car, I'm thankful, like there's so
Yes.
many things that can go wrong that morning.
We
But
could be having a bad day and then you're like, you know what? How do I make it better?
yes. And literally you decide. The other day, like I was kind of feeling like I don't, when you're just like in a funk.
In a rut, yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, no, like I have to take in control like my emotions, and it's gonna be a good day. Just take everything day by day. What on your to-do list, take it, take it day by day.
That's really cool, and it's as a Latina, like it makes me happy to be Latina as well, and to know someone who's younger than me, 23-year-old entrepreneur with those goals, who's gonna be an investor. Man, I'm gonna see Reyna's name somewhere, being a real estate investor over there in California.
Yes.
So that's really exciting. I'm excited for you. I'm looking forward to see what comes next in your journey. And if people wanted to do social media marketing with you or have some kind of event planning, where can they find you?
Yeah, so they can find me on my Instagram, hola_Reyna, Reyna. And also I have my Facebook, Reyna Marrufo. And yeah, from there, you can email me through, if you go on my Instagram, you can find my email and things like
Awesome.
that.
Yeah, and I'll post the links in the show notes so people can just click and go to the page.
Awesome.
Oh, and before, what is your podcast name?
Well, it's Reyna's podcast, Overcoming Adversity y Echándole Ganas.
Y echándole ganas.
Yeah.
Nice. I love it.
Thank
Yeah, we always gotta echarle ganas,
I know. You have to.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Reyna. I'm so grateful for you being here with me and sharing your story and, making this conversation. Anger was one of them that I heard a lot, equality, empowerment, and making these conversations more normal in the Hispanic community. And of course, to make everybody else aware of where we come from. So I really am grateful to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
This interview and conversation with Reyna was really nice to have, in the way that I learned that you can't ever be too young or too old to start something, to chase your dreams, to start a business, to get into whatever you think you are capable of. Remember, you are always capable of so many things. Just believe that you can do it. Some other points that I got from this conversation with Reyna, who's an awesome Latina entrepreneur, empowerment of women in the Latino community, is if you start to think negative things about yourself, challenge yourself to say double the positive things about yourself. Wherever you are, you don't have to be sitting down on a desk. You don't have to write this down. Just think the opposite of what is negative into positive and double that. Anger isn't always understood. Sometimes it's okay to go talk to someone to release those feelings and those thoughts. You want to take care of those before they grow any bigger. Support groups are always great, or get a coach, or even go to therapy. We don't normally think of anger as a conversation, but it can really take a toll on your body, so let's start taking care of it. Whenever you grow and learn, it's good to share with others. So, of course, to a certain extent, and if these people are asking for help. But if you feel like someone does need to hear something, be careful how you approach them. I was really grateful with Reyna for being on this podcast and sharing her story. Growing up Latino or Latina and with parents the way that she did isn't always the easiest thing to deal with, because our parents grew up in a different era, in a different country, and their beliefs are sometimes limiting, and we have to be careful not to allow them to affect us, but also we have to figure out a way to respect them at the same time. And although Reyna was angry for a while, she actually used that, without knowing, into something positive, and now she's doing so many great things with it. So I'm really proud of her being, again, young Latina, 23-year-old from LA, as well as the same as me, but someone who's doing something for herself to show that she can do it. I'm so grateful to be able to share these stories, to also be sharing my story from last week. If you haven't listened to it yet, I talk about a part of my life, a chapter that I did share in the book that I was a co-writer in, but I actually talk about it. So if you want to listen to it instead, and if you haven't gotten the book, then you can go ahead and listen to episode 15 where I retell that story and I share about that part of my life. I hope that if you ever have something good to say, to share, to teach someone, to educate, to empower somebody else, I hope you do share it. And if you do want to share your story, your journey, how you've gotten to where you are, contact me, go to the website and just shoot me an email. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram on Metafit Metamind Podcast, on Facebook, or on my website at metafitmetamind.com. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Castbox, among other platforms that you may listen to, even iHeartRadio now. You can also leave a review on Castbox, Apple Podcast, and Podchaser, as I mentioned in the beginning of this episode. Don't forget that you can go to my website to purchase the book, and also subscribe, rate, share. But you can also support me in my mission to raise your voice, share your story, or like I've been saying in Spanish, alza tu voz, comparte tu historia, by going on my Patreon page at patreon.com/metafitmetamind. Again, I am super grateful to you for listening to this episode up to this point. I will always be telling you this, always and forever. I am Carla Rodriguez. This is Metafit Metamind Podcast, where we are normalizing the conversations that we would have never had. Until next time.